As you all can see, Association of Muslim Professionals has completed 13 years of its existence. It started in 2007 and it has completed 13 glorious years. AMP is registered in India, USA, UK and Australia as a non-profit organization, and it has completed its 13 years of serving the community in the field of education, employment and economic empowerment. And we have a vision to positively impact 10 million people by the end of 2030. And the mission is to empower the underprivileged for the greater benefit of the society in general and the nation as a whole. And we want us to be a model community which is advanced in education, socially progressive, culturally vibrant, politically influential, and economically dynamic, so that everybody is included in the mainstream of the society. Our achievements include school development programs, where we conduct free skill development lectures for students from 8 to 10 standard. And we have a connection with 800 schools, and so far 281,000 students have benefited. We also conduct training, teacher training and parenting workshop, and more than 100 such workshops have been conducted. We have an employment assistance cell where we assist youngsters to get jobs and job-oriented training. And so far we have done, more than 300 plus job fairs and job drives, wherein 21,000 candidates have been employed through these job fairs. And we have conducted more than 200 employability trainings, which is for final year degree students, wherein 17,000 students have already benefited. These trainings help students gain confidence so that they are able to get through in the corporate world. Then we have scholarships and self-employment assistance, wherein we have so far helped 800 students for higher education scholarships, more than 800 again for orphan education assistance. And we have helped 425 plus families for self-employment assistance. So, they get into livelihoods and the families benefit. We have an AMP resource center where anybody can call up AMP and get assistance online for career counseling. We have almost 600 plus career counselors. More than 2,500 students have been counseled so far on these online career counseling. We also have held on-field career counseling sessions. We also have a career chart where we have distributed to more than 1,500 schools. Similarly, we have instituted awards for our educationists, and we have a national award for excellence in education. We have awarded more than 300 plus educationists so far, and we have tied up with more than 50 institutions for skill training and job fairs, including state governments. And we have currently more than 100 NGO partners who help us to implement these programs all over the country. For the next one, please. Right. And in this last year, 2020, which was affected due to the lockdown of COVID-19, we have launched 3 new initiatives in such tough times. So one is India Zakat, which is a crowdfunding platform, which helps needy people to get funds for education, medical relief, and livelihood assistance. Similarly, we have launched the IndiaMentors.com, which is a platform to get mentors and mentee together. This is again free initiative, so any mentee, any student post 10th and 12th can join as a mentee. Sorry, we already have more than 100 mentors registered. And lastly, we have empoweredjobs.com, which is a job portal which is free, again for job seekers, offering comprehensive offerings, including skill training as well as employability training. So all in all, these are new initiatives which have been launched by AMP last year. Thank you for that. Next one, please. As you can see, we have a great presence all around. We are active in more than 140 cities all over India and abroad. We are present in 26 states and 16 countries, and we have 6,000 active members who are basically members of the association, and they help in promoting these programs, activities. They actively participate. And we have online presence also, where we are connected with professionals in Instagram, Facebook, more than 1,25,000. Thank you. Bharat, next one. So we invite you all to join AMP either as a member or as a volunteer, depending on how you would like to. You can visit the website and you can see join AMP there. So you can join either as a member or as a volunteer and take part in this work that we do for the enhancement of the community and the society and the nation. Thank you for it. Right. Now, I will give you introduction of Dr. Srinivas. Dr. Aditya Srinivas is a capital market and financial market professional with specialization in macroeconomics and fundamental research. He is a chief operating officer of BSE Brokers Forum, that is Bombay Stock Exchange Brokers Forum. He has 17 years of corporate experience in field of financial services with complete knowledge about all the segments of the capital markets and financial products. And I invite him today to enlighten us with his knowledge for today. Dr. Aditya, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's my opportunity. It's my pleasure, sir.
Right. Now it's over to you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Okay, fine. Yes, friends, a very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to this webinar series. See, the whole objective, friends, of this webinars is to spread knowledge, to give you knowledge, practical knowledge, so that you can understand how the world economy is shaping up, how India is shaping up. So we have kept series of sessions in which each session will cover a unique topic. So today, since it is the first session, we will be covering the outlook on Indian economy. So I have a small presentation. I will share that first, and then we will go for question answer session. Correct. So I will be able to clarify all your doubts also. So don't worry about that. See, friends, Indian economy. See, if we talk of Indian economy, friends, then normally it is referred as heaven of stability for the simple reason that if you see last 20 years of our average GDP growth, then it has been around 7.5% as compared to global average of around 2.5 to 3%. Correct. So we have always been able to perform on a relatively stable footing. In fact, if we see the current scenario, that is during this entire COVID-19 mess where the world GDP is minus 4.4%. Last Friday only our Q3 GDP data come and we are back into positive zone. See, for April, May, June 2020, our GDP growth was minus 23.9% for the obvious simple reason that there was complete lockdown in the economy. Then as unlock happened for July, August, September, the GDP improved to minus 7.5%. That is from minus 23.9, we became minus 7.5. And just now, just last Friday when the data came for October, November, December, the Q3, quarter third data, we are into positive zone of 0.4%. So basically what I feel that for Jan, Feb, March, this 2021, when the data comes in the month of April and or May beginning, you will definitely see that we will definitely post respectable figures. So obviously there is a V-shaped recovery in the economy and most of the macroeconomic parameters are hinting towards that. See, once we go through the presentation, you will understand what important macroeconomic parameters we need to track. But before I start the other slides, just always remember, friends, that when you are studying Indian economy, global economy, since tomorrow that is our topic, always remember to have an eye on these four economies: US, Europe, China, and Japan. See, these are the four economies which always have created some or the other problem at the global level, and because of which the world economy has gone for a toss. For example, 2008 global financial crisis, it initiated from USA. 2011 European Union crisis, it initiated from Europe. 2015 commodity prices crash, it initiated from China. And 2020 COVID-19, everybody knows, is a gift of China. So basically, if you see last 20 years in which four major financial crises have occurred after Great Depression of 1929, then all the four problems have been out of this group of countries only. So hence, when you invest in markets, when you are studying economies or world economy, you have to keep an eye on these four also. why India would definitely perform well, or why our economy so far is also been performing relatively well. There are three important reasons for this. Number one is demographic dividend. See, the main strength of our economy is our young population. See, today we have 70% of population less than 35 years of age. The average age of an Indian is only 25 years as compared to 43 years in USA, Japan 52, and Europe 47 years. So we have large chunk of young working people. So when there are young people work, when they work, they will earn and they spend. So when they spend, obviously GDP rises. So that is why today most of the foreign companies, they want to be a part of Indian economy's growth. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. Second important factor is domestic consumption. See, whatever we manufacture, out of that 80% is consumed by our own people and we export only 20%. So luckily we are not an export dependent country as in case of China and Japan, whereas Europe is dependent on tourism and US lives on credit card. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. And finally, high savings rate also. See, our culture of saving money, our culture of preparing ourselves for a rainy day really helps us a lot. So if you see, Indian economy saving rate is 27% of GDP, whereas world average is only 21%. Always remember, friends, that saving results into capital formation into investment, and investment into asset creation. So because of these three unique features, our ability to perform is always on the higher side. If we talk of key macroeconomic parameters, see, when you want to analyze Indian economy, these are the seven main macroeconomic factors like GDP, inflation, interest rate, exchange rate, current account deficit, fiscal deficit, and index of industrial production. These seven factors, friends, are the main factors based on which you can analyze any country. Any country you can analyze. Out of these seven, GDP is the main factor which shows you the final output. Rest all are input. So when we say that GDP is rising, obviously it means that the overall macroeconomic parameters are shaping well, and that effect you can see in the GDP data. Normally, at the college levels, at the academic institutions, I have seen that GDP is explained as the net output of goods and services, net value of all the goods and services made in India. That's a correct definition, no doubt. But the practical one is basically it shows the economic progress made by a country. See, that is something very important. And this data is very minutely tracked by foreign institutions before they decide where to invest their capital. So that is why GDP data assumes a lot of importance. If we talk of GDP data, as I told, in the last 20 years, our average GDP growth has been around 7.5%, whereas global average has been 2.5 to 3%. So we have always, if you see, on a longer duration basis, outperformed the global GDP data by a sizable margin. As far as our GDP is concerned, it basically consists of 70% services area, 14% contributed by agriculture, and 15% manufacturing. Now here, if you see, friends, the share of agriculture looks the smallest, but the irony is that 62% of the people of the total population is dependent on agriculture for livelihood, and that is why the importance of agriculture sector cannot be undermined. This also means that if our GDP has to grow at 9%, agriculture sector has to grow at 4%. That is something very vital, very critical. On the other hand, the other important issue is that unfortunately since 1993, the contribution of manufacturing has remained stagnant only, and that is an urgent need to increase this share from 15% in GDP to 25%. See, Make in India campaign, if it is implemented properly, that will really help to create lakhs of job opportunities on one hand, and at the same time it will reduce the import bill and thus also make our balance of payment very strong. So that is something we need to keep it in mind. That is something very, very vital and important, what we are basically trying to focus upon. The second and the third macroeconomic factor is basically inflation and interest rate. See, as far as if we talk of inflation, inflation refers to continuous rise in the prices, and that obviously disturbs the economy and the purchasing power of the common man. So when inflation goes up, RBI is forced to increase interest rates. That is how the monetary framework works. So when inflation rises, RBI increases the interest rate. So inflation is an independent variable, friends, whereas interest rate is a dependent variable. Now when basically RBI increases repo rate to control inflation, what happens is that on one hand your FD start giving you more rate of interest, but loans also become more costly. So when loans become more costly, that results into fall in demand and consumption in the economy, because in India, friends, most of our people are fall into middle class category, and who always take loan capital to buy a house, buy a car, buy capital goods. So basically when they see that their EMIs are rising or the cost of capital has gone up, they typically tend to avoid taking loans, and that results into that the GDP also goes down. Always remember, interest rate has an inverse relationship with two things, GDP also and with stock market also. That means whenever interest rate rises in the economy, it results into fall in the GDP, because basically demand and consumption goes down as cost of capital rises. And on the other hand, when interest rates are high, even stock market goes down, because people feel that if the bank FD, which is a risk free rate of return, if that is giving us decent return, why we should take risk in stock market? See, currently why lot of money is coming into stock market, one of the key reasons is because interest rates are at 10 years low, interest rates are at drastically low level. So that is another reason why basically stock markets are rising. Friends, I will take all your questions, don't worry. You can post your question. Once I complete my PPT, I will take all the questions, don't worry. The fourth macroeconomic factor is basically exchange rate. See, exchange rate is the mirror of the economy, friends. Always remember, it's a mirror of the economy. So when basically we say it is a rupee dollar equation, how many rupees we have to pay for $1. So when rupee depreciates, it actually means that economy has become weak, and foreign currency, there is an outflow of foreign currency. On the other hand, when rupee appreciates, we feel that economy is strong and foreign currency inflows are coming. Now, as far as India is concerned, friends, the main issue is that when our rupee depreciates, it creates more problem, because we import 77% of total crude oil requirement. So when we import crude oil, and if the rupee is depreciated, it creates problem, because our balance of payment becomes weak. We have to pay more rupees for $1, and as a result, our oil import bill basically goes up. If you see this particular table, friends, then from 2007 to 2020, you can very well see the way our rupee has depreciated. In 2007, $1 was 38 rupees, and now it is at 74. So there has been a depreciation of almost 100%, unfortunately. And that is why when Raghuram Rajan was there, he often used to say that if we want to make rupee fundamentally strong, then we need to attract more FDI capital, foreign direct investment, because not FII. FII is foreign institutional investors who typically invest in stock market. So FDI investment is always better. That is something we have to keep it in mind. Exchange rate and crude oil, that is also affecting our economy in a big way. See, whenever basically crude oil internationally goes up, and if the rupee has depreciated, it is a twin blow, because when crude oil goes up, our oil import bill goes up, and on the other hand, since our rupee has depreciated, we have to pay more for the same quantity. So that basically affects our current account deficit also. Unfortunately, in the last 4 to 5 years, crude oil prices internationally have gone down, but unfortunately, government, for whatever reason, would not pass this benefit to the people, and today we are forced to pay near to 100 rupees for 1 liter of petrol and diesel. So that is something what is hurting the common man's budget. Then if we talk of current account deficit, see, it shows you the difference between exports and imports. So if the imports are more than exports, it is called as current account deficit. Now when our economy is in deficit, because we typically import gold and oil in a big way, see, these two are our main components which affects our current account deficit. In 2020, when there was pandemic, The gold imports reduced by 26% because the prices were too high. So obviously people avoided buying it. And on the other hand, oil imports were less because internationally crude oil prices have also gone down. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. If we are able to manage our current account deficit, then we will be having strong balance of payment and there will be less pressure on the import bill. Correct? Less pressure on the import bill. And that is why the objective of Make in India, that whatever best we can manufacture here, that will reduce not only import bill, but create jobs and save our precious foreign exchange also. So that is something very, very vital and important. Then the fifth macroeconomic parameter is basically what we call it as fiscal deficit. See, fiscal deficit is the gap between government's income and government's expenditure. Correct? Government's income is basically the taxes paid by you and me. So that is called as government's income. Government's expenditure is what government gets on poverty, defense, social causes, and infrastructure. So that is basically called as what we can say the expenditure part of the government. Now, typically speaking, the gap between government's income and government's expenditure is called as fiscal deficit. So that is the deficit part. Now, in the current budget, if you see, the fiscal deficit for the current year has been pegged at 9.6%. So that was obviously on the very high side. But that was bound to happen because during pandemic, government announced an economic package of 20 lakh crore rupees. Government had announced that economic package. So that had affected the finances of the government, but that was the need of the hour because globally, if you see, even all major countries in the world announced 10 to 15% of the packages as compared to their GDP. Correct? As compared to their GDP, 10 to 15% of those packages were announced. The roadmap given in fiscal deficit is that next year it will reduce to 6.8%, and by 2026 we will be having fiscal deficit of around 3.5 to 4%. Of course, when the previous governments were there, fiscal responsibility and budget management bill was passed in the parliament, which makes the current government answerable, any government, that why is the fiscal deficit rising. So obviously government also are cautious, has to be cautious regarding the expenditures made in unproductive sectors. Internationally, if you see, 3% fiscal deficit is normally considered as a good thing as a management of public finances. But we have never been able to achieve this figure. Typically, developing countries always have a fiscal deficit problem because the expenses rise due to some or the other reason, whereas revenue streams are relatively always in a tight manner. In fact, this time after the budget on 1st January, if you see, what has happened is that basically FIIs in February 2021 bought shares worth rupees more than 20,000 crore. 20,000 crore rupees of shares were bought by foreign institutional investors when they were convinced that fiscal deficit roadmap set by the government is achievable and that would help the economy recover on track. Finally, if you see the sixth factor, that is index of industrial production. See, this basically index, it tracks the demand in manufacturing segment. So when the IIP index rises, we say that there is lot of demand in the manufacturing segment. Unfortunately, this index was in negative territory between April to November. It was in negative territory because of the lockdown and other things. In November, it came to positive territory, and right now this data is at 1.04%, which is relatively somewhere near to the pre-COVID level. So basically, right now you can say that manufacturing has also started in the economy, but obviously it's a fact that it will still take time to reach the higher levels. Conclusion is, friends, always remember that basically if the macroeconomic indicators are on track, if the macroeconomic indicators are well in good shape, then you will always find FII and FDI both coming into the economy. And why this both type of this thing is important, capital is important, friends, because if both this type of capital we need, because we are basically a labor intensive economy, so we have a lot of labor. So if we have to deploy them, make them work, we need capital. Now, friends, apart from these macroeconomic indicators, what I have covered in the PPT is the structural reforms done by the government, four structural reforms and four programs implemented by the government. So we will just try to understand these eight things also. See, the four structural reforms that are likely to make India a real economic power in the coming years is GST, Aadhaar Card, Real Estate Regulation Act, and Banking Insolvency Act. So we'll just try to analyze them in short. See, GST, friends, has been a game changer in the sense that today government's revenue has shot up. In fact, before GST was introduced in India, obviously the GST was there in 100 countries in the world, and all countries witnessed that all revenue targets were broken. If you see the current scenario of GST for the last 5 months, 5 consecutive months, the GST collection is more than 1 lakh crore rupees. In fact, in February, this figure was 1.13 lakh crore rupees, and in January, it was 1.20, which was highest since the implementation of GST took place in 2017. So, with GST rising, two things happen. One, now governments cannot say that they don't have financial resources. Enough financial resources are there. Only thing, it should be utilized in proper way. That is one. And second is basically that businesses will now be able to do more white money business rather than cash and all those things. So GST has ensured that basically the compliance is on a higher level. Businesses will have more white income, white paper, and that will really help all businesses to grow in the long term. So that is why this particular GST will obviously be a major game changer. And in fact, even if new government comes in power, no government will try to basically change the structural reform because it has set the tone. Whereas Indian companies, Indian businessmen can develop their business genuinely and with white money. Second important structural reform was Aadhaar Card. See, Aadhaar Card ensured that the direct subsidy reaches to the last man in the queue and directly in his bank account. In fact, before Aadhaar Card was introduced, every year there was a leakage of 15,000 crore rupees, friends. Not one or two, but 15,000 crore rupees were released from the system, and actually nobody knew where that money was being utilized. So that is something, friends, which Aadhaar Card and other things have ensure that now those kind of things don't happen. Plus, authentication and other things have also played a very vital role when it comes to basically the use of Aadhaar card. So it has really helped in reducing fake documents, fake identities, other things, and at the same time it has helped to ensure that the benefits directly reach the people who are in dire need of those benefits. Third, Real Estate Regulation Act, RERA. See, RERA ensured that an area that is real estate where maximum amount of black money and illegal money channelizes into. So RERA ensured that builders are in their control, builders are controlled, and the common man's hard-earned money is not taken for a ride. So that is something very important because in RERA there are clear-cut provisions like that if the project is not registered, then 10% of the project value will have to be paid as penalty. If the builder gives wrong advertisement, 3 years jail. If there is a late delivery, basically the house is not delivered on time, 12% interest has to be paid. So basically all these things have ensured that only will ensure even in the long term that only genuine corporate builders stay in the foray and fly by night operators and others are forced to exit. So this will really help to increase the confidence of a common man because housing sector is one where when house gets created, it also creates allied demand in the field of basically labor, steel, aluminium, sand, bricks, and plus employment for construction workers. So that is why housing sector is a major sector. Finally, Banking Insolvency Act. See, Banking Insolvency Act, when it was passed, an NCLT body was formed, National Company Law Tribunal, which has ensured, friends, that basically all those corporates who use PSU banks as piggy banks and were not paying the money, were not repaying their loans, are now taken to task, and whatever are their assets, it is liquidated and the loans are recovered. As a result, if you see in last 1.5 year, if you basically see in last 1.5 year, if you see the NPAs from 9 lakh crore rupees have reduced to 7.5 lakh crore rupees. Then if we talk of four best programs of the government, even that is something very vital, very important. See, the first was Make in India, friends. Make in India, Skill India, Digital India, and Startup India. Again, here one caveat, they have to be implemented in proper sense. If we talk of Make in India, friends, if this objective of increasing the share of manufacturing in the economy rises from 15 to 25%, trust me, there will be three very major benefits. First, lakhs of job opportunities will get created in the economy. Second, it will reduce the import bill, which will save precious foreign exchange. And third, it will also boost brand image of India globally. Not only that, friends, if you see, basically a lot of companies are already approaching India for setting up their manufacturing plant. For instance, if you see, the latest example was Tesla. Tesla has already set up its subsidiary company in Bangalore ROC. They have already registered their company, and they are in talks with Gujarat, Maharashtra and Karnataka state governments to set up their manufacturing plant. In fact, IKEA, which is the largest furniture making company, is already setting up its second store in Navi Mumbai. The first one it has is Hyderabad. So basically, this clearly indicates that India is on the global radar. Second is Skill India. See, Skill India is something very important, friends, because if today's youth, if the youth does not have an employment, obviously he will create problem. So it is very important that if we teach skill, one particular skill like driving, electrical work, mechanical work, tailoring, cooking, so that that particular person is able to earn his livelihood and he can manage his show. So that is something very vital. And when skill is provided to each and every person, the overall contribution in the GDP will be very high, and basically he will be able to live a dignified life. Third, Digital India. See, today the entire world is connected through information technology, IT. In fact, during the lockdown, global lockdown, whatever work has happened, whatever productivity has happened, it is only and only because of information technology. So obviously, one thing is very clear, that Digital India is something the need of the hour. In fact, the government's vision to connect all 6 lakh villages in India through the IT network is something which will really help to ensure that information and connectivity reaches to the last man in the queue, and plus everybody benefits out of this. Finally, friends, Startup India. See, Startup India is something very critical, very important. Correct. The main objective is to create more and more entrepreneurs, friends. In fact, if you see, we had 33,000 startups registered in India after US and UK. Now, why Startup India is very vital? See, if there are, I always quote this example, so I have written here that suppose in a typical MBA institute, there are 60 students. Now, these students, if they go out and search a job, they are 60 job seekers. But just imagine that each one of them starts a small own financial firm. Somebody in mutual funds, somebody in insurance, somebody in equity, somebody in financial planning. So the moment they start even a small office, they will create 3 jobs, because they will be needing one office boy, one marketing person, and one office admin. So the moment they do this, the 60 same students are creating 60 into 3, 180 jobs. So this is how, friends, we can always shine out and basically solve the problem of employment by creating more and more entrepreneurs. That is something very important. So with this, friends, I conclude my part of the presentation, and now we can go with the question answer, so that I will be more than happy to solve all your doubts. So please feel absolutely free to ask
Uh,
questions.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya. That was a nice, enlightening session on the Indian economy, and I hope we go on to do well after this COVID lockdown that really kind of it handicapped us to a large
Yes,
extent. So thanks once again, and we'll go to the question answer section. We have a question from Mashrooq Khan, and
yes.
the question
Sir,
is, yeah, tell
sir,
me.
I am able to read it. Should I read and answer it?
Certainly, that will be fine. Not an issue at all.
Fine. See, the first question is why FD and loan interest rates are very less in US compared to that of India. Oh, that's a very nice question. See, basically, not only, sir, in USA, but if you take USA, currently interest rates are 0.25%. If you take UK, interest rates are 0.50. If you take Europe, it is 0.50. In fact, Japan does not have any interest rates. If you go to a Japanese bank and if you put 1 lakh ENF deposit, you will be charged for putting that money, but you won't get any interest. See, the whole concept of these nations is they are typically highly capital intensive economies. So when an economy is capital intensive, when the flow of capital is very high, interest rate do tend to be very low. In India, we are a labor intensive economy. We have a lot of manpower, but we don't have capital. And that is why you will see that if you take a loan in India from an NBFC, not a bank, but an NBFC, they will charge you 18 to 20%, and people still willingly pay because we have large section of people who are not eligible to take loans from banking sector. Plus, capital in India is lesser as compared to these global economies. The per capita income in dollar terms in India is only $2,000, whereas China it is 45,000 US dollar and US itself is 65,000 US dollar. So you can very well understand, sir, that the kind of capital flows these economies have, and interest rate is a function of availability of capital. The more the capital is available, the more easily it is available, the lesser will be the interest rate. So that is the main reason. They are all capitalistic countries with huge financial resources, whereas we are a labor intensive economy. Second question is, how long will it take to reach GDP of 7.5%? See, basically, sir, if you talk of GDP, what I feel is that the entire 2021, by December 2021, we should be at least above 6% GDP mark. That is what I feel, because the way unlock has ensured that the economic activities are picking up. Say, for example, if you find, as I told you, that GST collections are crossing 1 lakh crore rupees, then basically, if you see other things also like IIP index into positive territory, the interest rates are at a 10 years low. So we have host of factors which are in favorable. The only risk is the second COVID wave, second or third, whatever you call. So that is something we need to be cautious about. So if COVID is controlled and if vaccination takes place properly, because now even private players are likely to be roped in. So I feel that by June 30th, the entire economy will be back on track. So by December, the GDP should be back to at least above 6%. That is what I feel. Yes, sir, I will be sharing the PPT. That should not be a problem. So don't worry about that. See, Navid sir, basically economic scenario, as I told you, the forecast is that by the end of 2021, we should definitely be in a far better situation, because vaccination will be done for half of the population, and that will be more than enough to break the virus chain. Plus, the way corporates are resuming back their office work and other things, and plus the way even global investors are looking upon India as an investment option, as a production option, definitely things stands to be in the better side, and by year end we should be in a far favorable position. See, basically, if you talk of career options in capital market domain, see, there are variety of career options available. But if you ask me the best ones, obviously it would be on the research side. See, if you become a fundamental analyst, if you become a technical analyst, then obviously you have a very long career with you, because that straightway deals with your mental ability and your qualification. So if you have done MBA finance from a good B school, then definitely you stand a very good chance of getting a proper paid job in the capital market area. That is what I can share as of now. Because of pandemic, financial crisis has arise more. Does AMP provide stock market course to become an independent in life? See, Fardin, we can basically definitely, even I am an AMP member, I can assure you that we can train you, we can give you proper guidance. And after that, you can always start your own financial consultancy also. So that should not be a problem. And you can very well become independent in life. See, the beauty of capital markets is that if you want to start your own financial consultancy also, no, you just need a computer, and from the drawing room of your house you can start the work. The best part of this line is that it doesn't require much of a capital like other areas in which lot of capital is required to start a business. Here, with minimum capital of even less than 1 lakh rupee, you can get all licenses of mutual fund, this insurance and equity markets, and you can definitely start your business. So that should not be a problem. See, Mohammed Tala, if we want to appreciate the rupee, then basically what we need to do is that we need to have more of FDI capital. See, FDI is foreign direct investment, and basically FDI capital is something which is always very long term in nature. So when that capital comes in the economy, it will it will augment our foreign exchange reserve also, which will help rupee to appreciate. Plus it will create job opportunities for you and me. See, always remember, FDI directly creates job opportunities at the grassroots level as compared to FII capital, which typically comes only in stock market. So if we want to really appreciate Indian currency, then more of FDI flow is more welcome. See, remittances obviously helps our economy, because when remittances come, foreign remittance, it increases our foreign exchange reserve. And when foreign exchange reserve keeps on rising, it increases the confidence of foreign investors to invest more in the economy, because they feel that if the government has such a huge forex reserve, the repayment will not be a problem. So that is why it basically helps the overall economy to grow by getting more investments into various sectors. See, basically, Arshia, if you see, digital India concept is picking up, and it will obviously take some time to reach all rural areas because their networks are weak. I fully agree with you. But in spite of that, if you see, in last few years, the connectivity has relatively improved much better. And going ahead also, government is of the firm vision that all these telecom companies will be made to penetrate more into rural areas, so that the rural people, and that is why government has a mission also to connect all 6 lakh villages through fiber internet. That is properly a target of the government. Obviously, all these targets have got slightly delayed because of this COVID-19. But nevertheless, this will really help India to be more connected. Better sharing of information will take place. See, Adnan Sayyed, if you basically ask of disinvestment, see, the whole objective of disinvestment is to make these companies, to make government companies more answerable, more professional, and once they are listed on stock market, obviously they will have to improve their performance forcefully, because when they are listed, so institutional investors like FIIs and mutual funds will be holding their shares. So every quarter when they give results, there is investor conference in which they will be asked all sort of questions if they are unable to perform. So basically, divesting stake in PSU will make this PSU more professional, more what I can say, performance oriented. Currently what happens, we even do not know what exactly is going on in these companies, but once they are listed on stock exchange, obviously they have to disclose everything, so that brings in more transparency also. See, basically, Mashuk Khan, we have to understand one thing, sir. Okay, primarily it is about base. See, US says that I made 1% GDP growth, but that is on a base of $21 trillion. Size of US is $21 trillion, whereas size of Indian economy is $2.8 trillion. So on $2.8 trillion to register a growth rate of 5 to 6% is very easy, but to register a growth of 1% on a $21 trillion economy is very difficult. So that is why you find that developed economies have relatively lesser GDP growth rate. The simple reason is their base itself is very big. See, it is something like this, that if a person is getting salary of 5,000 and if you do it 10,000, it will show you a rise of 100%. But if a person whose salary is already 1 lakh and if you increase it to 1 lakh 10,000, then also it shows a rise of only 10%, because the base effect is there. So that is what you have to keep it in mind. Just 1 minute. Which was the question? Yes, is PSU banks privatization a good move? See, definitely yes, because see, PSU banks, earlier there were 27 PSU banks in India. After the merger of PSU banks, now the current figure is 12. There are 12 major PSU banks in India. But even out of those 12, government is seriously considering that certain banks be made totally privatized. See, this will put pressure on those board managements to perform well, because when new ownership comes, obviously it will be more performance oriented, target oriented. So this will obviously increase customer satisfaction in terms of customer delivery. Right now, if you go to PSU bank, they are not even bothered to answer you well, because they know that their jobs are secured and we cannot even do anything. But when it is privatized, obviously they are made answerable. So that is where the difference is. See, per capita income is nothing but national income divided by total population. So that is called as per capita income. In simple words, income of per person. In India, in dollar terms, this is only $2,000. So $2,000 into 70, if you do, it comes to basically 35,000 rupees. per capita income. So obviously it is very, very less, friends, as compared to USA, which is 65,000 US dollars annual. Correct. So those kind of things we need to keep it in mind. Yes, definitely Indian economy will be among the top three economies in next 10 years, because see, whatever reforms and all these things are taking place, and the way after this COVID-19, the importance of India as a supply chain, as a manufacturing hub has been recognized globally, you will definitely find that India will become among top 3 to 5 economies in next 10 years. See, just imagine, friends, that during the lockdown in Reliance Industries, 12 global investors took stake. 12 global investors, including Facebook, Google, then basically KKR Capital, Oak Silver, so many Abu Dhabi Investment Trust, so many international investors have taken stake. So why they are putting so much of money? Because they bet on India. That is something what they are primarily trying to focus upon. See, a stock market, to be very frank, see, stock market has gone up. It is not a bubble for the simple reason, please understand, that this is money which is coming from USA. See, USA printed $2.5 trillion, and that money through US banks has come to foreign institutional investors, and they are investing not only in India, but all emerging stock markets like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Plus, their main reason for investment is the bounce back what they are expecting in Indian economy. And even if you see government and RBI's estimate, they are themselves are confident that in this year the GDP will grow at around 10 to 11% is the growth rate of GDP. So obviously the bounce back in economy will be much stronger, and it will be much more sustainable. So that is why it is not a bubble in stock market, but a what I can say, faith in Indian economy that in coming months it will definitely do better. See, startup, you can definitely see for startup, there is nothing like right or wrong time. Only thing you should be able to identify one particular problem and you should have a solution to it. So that is the best way to do a startup. And in startup, please today understand that, say for example, even if you go with in the education sector, if you develop a startup which basically gives knowledge to the needy and the poor people, obviously that will also have lot of valuation matrices, because in India number game is the main thing. Scalability, you can easily scale a startup through the use of technology. So if you do that, obviously you will be able to make good amount of money. So that is why you can definitely have a startup in this scenario also. See, Indian interest rates are already at a 10-year low. So I don't think that from here onwards, interest rates will go low, rather they will rise. The moment RBI has also told that the moment the economy comes on track and things are in a more, what I can say, better position, the RBI will reverse all these things and interest rates will start rising. So please understand, this is a temporary phenomena. Before COVID-19 had lockdown was initiated, RBI in the month of February or March last year had reduced the repo rate in one shot by 70 basis points. So currently the repo rate is at only 4%. So it is already at a 10 years low. So I don't think that now there is any room for RBI to reduce interest rate. See, basically, Samir sir, the point here is that US dollar is a global currency. It is not a local currency. And that is why even if they print so much of currency, the value of UFD still remains intact, because it keeps on flowing in global financial markets. That is the main strength of US currency. Why any other country does not print so much of currency? Because if you print so much of currency, then basically you will not survive, only because that will create huge amount of inflation. So that particular point we need to keep it in mind. It will create a lot of inflation. But in USA, what happens is when they print currency, that currency does not stay in US, but through institutional investors, that money gets distributed at the global level. So that is what the printing of US currency is all about. See, Forex Reserve, what do we exactly do with Forex Reserve? See, Forex Reserve is used to pay for imports. Whatever we import, we have to pay foreign exchange for that. And that is why you need sufficient amount of foreign exchange. See, Forex Reserve, when we use this word, it basically consists of three things. Number one, basket of currency, which includes dollar, yen, pound, euro. That is number one. Number two, actual gold reserves, how much gold we have. And third thing is SDR, special drawing rights, which is a paperless currency issued by International Monetary Fund. So basically, together, all these three make up our foreign exchange reserve. And right now, our forex reserve is $590 billion. We are having one of the highest forex reserve because in last 1 year, there has been flood of money from foreign institutional investors. See, our rupee is weaker because, as I told you, Mohammad Kalim, the main reason is that we need to attract FDI capital. See, FII, what happens is when they invest, dollar comes in, but the moment they withdraw, again dollar goes out. So when dollar goes out, obviously rupee again weakens. If you see just last Friday, in one single day, FIIs withdraw 8,300 crore rupees, 8,300 crore. So obviously the rupee depreciated straight by 100 paisa. 100 paisa rupee depreciated in one trading session. So that is a clear example that is why instead of pushing for more FII money, it is welcome, no doubt, but we need to push for FDI capital. FDI is long-term and very stable capital. So that helps our basically rupee to become more strong. See, China is ahead of India. Adnan Sayyed, we have to please understand one thing, that China's data, to be very frank, cannot be relied upon. See, they never allow their data to get re-verified. They never allow their data to get scrutinized. So it is always a challenge to believe what they are telling. As of now, if I frankly tell you, China is in a big mess and their actual GDP is not even 3% what they are claiming, but it is in negative zone. But anyways, it is very difficult to ascertain what is their actual economic data. In fact, even when they calculate FDI, even if the capital flows from one normal state, that is the inland state, to another state, they call it as FDI. So it is very difficult to judge and find out their basically data. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. See, benefit of privatization. Obviously, please understand that privatization will ensure that the organization becomes more performance oriented. Number one. Second, obviously, when privatization, profit is the objective, reward is also there. And when those companies expand, it also creates job opportunities. See, in government entities, there is a lot of lethargy because there is no accountability. In privatization, once the company is private, obviously you are answerable. So once you are answerable, you are bound to perform. See, basically, Indian stock markets gets affected by Nasdaq because it is a global exchange, and SGX Nifty is where maximum institutional investors put their money. And plus, it is a time arbitrage also. Time arbitrage means when we have day in India, the markets are already closed in USA. So whatever is the closing which happens in Nasdaq and Dow Jones, that has a direct impact on Indian markets. And plus, Singapore Nifty, what is called as SGX Nifty, has a 99% correlation. So if you see, if SGX Nifty is 100 points plus, we will definitely be 80 points plus. If it is down by 100 points, we will be down by 80 points. If you track this correlation, it also becomes an easy way to make a trading strategy also. See, basically stock market was booming because of huge liquidity. Please understand that stock market is a function of demand and supply. If there are more buyers, it has to rise irrespective of any economic data. During this pandemic, as I told you, foreign institutional investors in 2020 have invested 1,68,000 crore, not one or two, but 1,68,000 crore were invested by them. So basically markets ran up like anything. In fact, even in 2021 till date, 43,000 crore rupees have been invested. 43,000 crore has been invested, and that is the main reason why we are in this particular bull zone. See, oil prices, actually government should take a call and immediately reduce the prices, because you will be surprised to know that in petrol 61% is taxes and in diesel 56% is taxes. So actually government should reduce their share of earnings, so that would automatically bring down the prices. But I am also really surprised that rather than doing those things, they are actually affecting a common man's budget. Where can you monitor foreign markets? See, basically there is a website, sgxnifty.org. sgxnifty.org basically is the answer, this thing. Just a minute, I'll just type it here, sgxnifty.org. See, basically this is something, this is basically what I can say, a website which you can refer, where all markets are there. China definitely is labor intensive, but what they have done very tactfully is that their parliament, though they say to the world that we are labor intensive socialist, but their parliament consists of richest people of China. So frankly speaking, it is actually a capitalistic economy hidden under the disguise that it is a labor economy or a socialist economy, to be very frank. See, basically, Atir, if you want to learn various concepts, initially start reading Economic Times and Money Control website. Those two is something very important. Economic Times and Money Control. These two things is very important. If you can basically read both of them, then there is no problem. Economic Times and Money Control. These two things will give you a lot of knowledge. Where FIIs and investing, see, this kind of news keeps on regularly coming in what I can say Economic Times newspaper. So that is why I told you that reading Economic Times and Money Control will really help you to get knowledge about overall capital markets, economy and other things. Yes, we have been able to answer all the questions, friends. It was a very healthy question answer session. I'm really happy that so many questions were there. So that really shows that you are keenly interested in this area and our efforts have not gone waste. So with this, I conclude my part. So sir, if we can just take over.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Aditya. It was a right. Razak sir, yeah, you may take over. Thank you. You will propose the vote of thanks. Thank you, Razak bhai.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Aditya, for a wonderful session. I mean, you could have made out rightly what you said. When you look at the question answer session, that show how serious the audience was
Yes.
there. Today's audience
Correct.
were ideally common man who looks at capital market, who looks at GDP, all this, they seems to look them as a jargons. For them,
Correct.
everything look alien numbers, alien words. But I would like to thank doctor for giving such a wonderful answer, simplifying every terminology into a common man language, which we were able to digest and understand, and we could have related to it. Rightly, what doctor also said was we should read about all this financial term from the right source, that is the right newspaper, where we will be able to understand and we will be able to make use of it for our personal investment
Yes.
also.
Correct.
Like today's session was a very knowledgeable session. Today's session was an eye opener for us to understand some of the terminology which we always hear but we couldn't understand. I think tomorrow's session will be more exciting because it is a global economy, which is a much
Yes.
bigger thing to understand and learn from doctor. So I will request everyone who attended today's session to also attend tomorrow's session. It will be held at the same time by the same speaker, where he will make us understand about global terminology. Now, a lot of people understand करके FI का पैसा आता है, FI सब कुछ कर रहा है, ये FI है क्या? So when you look
Yes.
at a global economy, you will understand it in a much better way. जो हमें FI नजर आते हैं, वो उस कंट्री के लोकल बैंक हो सकता है, उस कंट्री का
Yes.
लोकल इंश्योरेंस हो सकता है, हमें वो एलियन दिखता है बट उन कंट्री के लिए वो लोकल होता है, राइट? तो कल का जो सेशन होगा दैट विल बी मोर एक्साइटिंग, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक एंड यू कैन लर्न मोर. मेरा रिक्वेस्ट होगा ऑडियंस से कि आप लोग खुद भी अटेंड कराइए और स्पेशली स्टूडेंट्स को बोलिए कि डॉक्टर का, आदित्य का जो एक्सपीरियंस है, जो नॉलेज ये कैरी करते हैं, आई एम श्योर जो भी स्टूडेंट्स होंगे उनके लिए बहुत वैल्यू एडिशन होगा
काफी
फ्रॉम
फायदा
टू
होगा.
पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू.
Yes.
एक उनके करियर में उनको हेल्प आएगा ताकि उनको अगर किसी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन में काम करना होगा तो दे विल बी ऑन अ बेटर नोट टू अंडरस्टैंड द टर्मिनोलॉजी. सेकंड, क्योंकि वो लोग यंग है, स्टूडेंट्स है, आने वाले टाइम पे वो जब जॉब करने लगेंगे तो उनको इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए बहुत जरूरी है पहले वो चीज समझे. तो मैं चाहूंगा करके कल के सेशन में जितने ऑडियंस से खुद भी आए प्लस स्टूडेंट्स को इनवाइट कीजिए ताकि वो आए और सीख सके. अगर डॉक्टर साहब इतना टाइम दे रहे हैं, इतना नॉलेज शेयर कर रहे हैं, तो इट इज आवर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कि नॉलेज को हम लोग राइट लोगों तक पहुंचाए. राइट.
Correct, sir.
Thank
Correct.
you so much, Dr. Aditya,
Thank you,
for
sir.
giving
Thanks a lot.
valuable time and from information. And we look forward to meeting you tomorrow again, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you very
audience.
much. Thanks a lot.